I think I am ready to finally admit that I have been in a reading slump. I think it's taken some time for me to accept this fact, but it is definitely true. I have just not been in the reading spirit. Hi everyone, my name is Monty if you're new here, and today I'm just going to be talking about all the books that I read in February and March. I usually do a monthly reading wrap up, but I just didn't read enough books in these 2 months individually to justify doing a full video. So I am combining them into one. Like I said, I've been in a little bit of a reading slump, and I don't know how to describe it exactly because I have been reading pretty much every day. It's just I haven't been reading that much every day. It's been like a few pages here and there. And at first in February, I was trying really hard to push through that feeling, and I was trying to force myself to read. And then I just came to the decision to respect the slump, and I'm kind of at peace with it. I think it's fine. I started out this year pretty strong. I read 10 books in January, and then I ended up reading 6 books total in February and March. So quite a bit of a difference between January and then February and March combined. Even still, I'm reminding myself that reading 3 books a month is a little bit more than average. It's just less than my average. And I really don't know why I've been feeling this way, because I have read a couple of really stellar books. It's not that I haven't been reading books that I've enjoyed. I just am not devoting that much time to reading. I'm doing other things. And again, that's totally fine. I'm okay with it, but that's why we're combining my wrap up to go over the books that I read in the last 2 months versus just the last month. So let's just get into it. I started out in February reading Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. Before I explain what the book is about and how I felt about it, I need to talk about what initially drew me to these books, and it's the covers. I am fully obsessed with the covers of these books, and not the versions where it's like a woman's legs in heels. It's more the version that's on the screen here. I love these covers. I think they're so stunning, so eye-catching. They're like pieces of art. And so I already wanted to read these books just based off of the covers, and then I learned a little bit more through YouTube and Goodreads and whatnot about what the series is actually about. And people really like to describe this series as Gossip Girl taking place in London, and I feel that that is a very apt description. I myself was a huge Gossip Girl fan. I grew up reading the Gossip Girl books, and then I watched the series twice all the way through and had an excellent time both times, no regrets. But I will say that my Gossip Girl era was more in my late teens, early 20s, so I wasn't quite sure how I would feel about reading something similar at this point in my life. And I ended up liking Magnolia Parks quite a bit. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, which I wasn't really expecting. To start off, I really enjoyed Jessa Hastings' writing style. She does have a little hint of stream of consciousness, in my opinion, and that took some getting used to. But once I kind of got in the flow of her writing style, I really liked it a lot. In this story, we are following a couple of sorts. We're following Magnolia Parks and BJ Ballantyne, is that his name? BJ Ballantyne. And these 2 characters have known each other forever. They grew up together. They've known each other since they were 4 years old, and eventually they end up in a relationship with one another that lasts for several years before it ends due to an unfortunate incident. Oh no, I think someone's cutting grass or something outside. Good, very good, just what I needed while I was filming. Oh my, it continues. I think we're done. But if not, I'll relocate so that we can do this in peace. All right, what was I saying? So BJ and Magnolia Parks, yeah, have been dating for a few years. They've known each other forever, and then something unfortunate happens and they end up splitting. But they still maintain a relationship of sorts that they consider to be like a friendship. But in essence, it's a emotional relationship without any of the physical accompaniments. And what they do is they like to hurt one another, right? So there's like a constant push and pull. So BJ will sleep with someone and hurt Magnolia, and to retaliate, Magnolia will then start dating someone, and then BJ will feel affected by that and he will sleep with someone else, and it's just this constant back and forth. It is very, very toxic. They care deeply for one another, but they continue to hurt each other, and they know that they're hurting each other and they can't seem to help themselves. Yeah, it's just super toxic, but it is very, very realistic. I feel like I've been in this situation. I feel like other people have been in this situation, a lot of people in fact. And what I love about the way Jessa Hastings handles this relationship is she does not in any way glamorize it. She just presents it as it is and lets you as the reader have mixed feelings about it. You never know whether you want them to be together or whether you're wanting them to just end things. It's kind of unclear throughout the whole thing. At least I was. I couldn't decide whether I was rooting for them or not. And that's real, you know? It wasn't romanticized in any way. I don't feel like the author was pushing the relationship. Oh no. Okay. I'm going to relocate. I think you might still be able to hear that noise a little bit, but hopefully it's better. In summary, with Magnolia Parks, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the writing. I really liked the friendships in the book. The only thing for me was that it got a little repetitive. The back and forth between BJ and Magnolia was frustrating for me often as the reader, which I get is kind of the point, but that still made it a little bit difficult to push through at times. But overall, I really liked it. I'm going to continue with the series, which I'm stoked about, because if I like the whole series, I will be purchasing the books, and I don't purchase books very easily, but these are my favorite covers of all time. So I feel like if I love the rest of the series, I just have to. And I'm pretty excited about that. So, Magnolia Parks. All right. The next book that I read is The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett. I decided to read this because one of the goals that I challenged myself with this year, 2024, was that I wanted to read more classics, and this is a classic detective novel. So I thought it would be like a pretty easy classic for me to get through. It's super short, it's a mystery. Did I enjoy it? Yes. Did I really enjoy it? No. I thought it was perfectly fine. It's exactly what you would expect, right? I mean, it's a mystery that was written in the early 1900s or something like that. Yes, early 1900s. It definitely held my interest. The writing was very digestible. I think that if I had been assigned to read this book in an academic setting, like if I had been assigned it for either high school or college reading, required reading, I would have eaten this up. I feel like next to other classics that might drag on for someone like me, this would have really stood out as being highly entertaining and easy to read. However, when I put it up against contemporary mysteries and thrillers that are just twist after twist after twist, it falls a little flat, and that's okay. I still had a decent time with it. I just didn't have the best time ever. It was a perfectly fine read, 3 out of 5 stars. If you're looking for a classic detective story, you will get exactly that with this book. So, The Maltese Falcon. After reading The Maltese Falcon, I was on a little bit of a struggle bus with reading. I mean, I was the entirety of the last 2 months, but I was trying to snap myself out of it, and that's when I filmed my 5-star predictions reading vlog. So I picked out 3 different books that I felt like had the potential to be 5 stars for me, and I read those. You can go watch that video, but I'm gonna briefly talk about each of those 3 books. One of them, which was a 5 stars for me. The first one that I picked up was 7 Days in June. This is a romance novel, but it's a serious romance novel, and you need to go into this book knowing that you are not gonna get a light, fluffy read. This is not like an easy beach read romance type of book. This is very serious, very heavy undertones. Our main characters have really intense traumatic pasts, and so you're learning about their past throughout the entire book. There are definitely trigger warnings that you should look up, but I loved the story. I really loved it. It's a second chance romance. I'm realizing that I really like second chance. I like for characters to part ways, do a lot of reflection, and then come back together as slightly elevated versions of themselves, and seeing if they can put the energy into the relationship, put their best foot forward, and be together in a better space. I generally like that idea of the characters working on themselves and then coming back together. And that's exactly what happened in this book, and I just really loved it. One of our characters has a kid in the story, and I really liked her character, this daughter. She was full of personality and made me laugh out loud several times. And yeah, I really loved this. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. And so if you're looking for a romance with a lot of depth to it, you should definitely pick this one up. The next book that I picked up on Kindle was I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. This was my first 5-star read of the year, and still my only 5-star read of the year. I loved this book, and it's actually pretty surprising that I did love it so much, because it had a couple of things in it that I don't typically gravitate towards, that I don't typically like. One being, it didn't have any chapter breaks. It was just one continuous novel. Normally that would bother me, but it's a really short book, and it was so gripping that I didn't mind at all. The other aspect to the book that I don't normally like is that the book ends with unanswered questions. And I like to have things explained to me. I want to know everything. I don't like fever dream books. I don't like unreliable narrators. I like to know exactly what's happening, and you just don't know what's happening in this book. This book sets out to make you think about humanity. What does it mean to be human? What experiences do you have to be considered human? And I just found it to be so fascinating, and it made me turn on my brain, and I loved it. This book is kind of like a dystopian science fiction type novel. We are following this girl who is caged underground with 39 other women. She is the youngest woman in the group. She was a child when she was imprisoned, and so she knows no other life other than being trapped underground in this cage. Whereas the other 39 women remember their lives before they were put underground. They remember living just like a normal life on Earth, and now they are just all living in this bunker. They are guarded by all these men who are just like constantly keeping an eye on them. And then one day, out of nowhere, they are released. And you will find out why they were released when you read the book. You won't find out why they were released, but you'll understand what happened, I guess, upon their release into the world again. And you just see their experience as they are reacquainted with the outside, and how they deal with that and what they are met with. And it is riveting. I couldn't recommend this more. It is such a quick read that even if you don't like it, it's not like you're gonna spend a ton of wasted time on it, you know? So anyway, 5 stars, I loved it. I think you should read it. The third and final book that I read for my 5-star prediction video is The Death of Vivek OG. This is a book where you know from the start how the book is going to end. You know that our main character, Vivek OG, is going to die. You just don't know the circumstances surrounding their death. I did really like it. I don't think that I loved it, but it was very quick for me to read. I had no problem turning the page. I was very hooked with this book. I wanted to know how things ended. There's a lot about identity in here and how to accept who you are and embrace who you are and how to share that with the world and share that with other people and how those people receive it. And it's about family ties and it's about friendship, and it is so devastating. It is a really sad book. I know that a lot of people who have read this book have cried. I cried on the inside. I don't generally cry on the outside when I read books, but I felt it deep in my bones. I said this in another video, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of the premise of Everything I Never Told You, where you are kind of starting out the book knowing about the death of a child and seeing how it impacts the family and the friends of this person and how they all are trying to figure out exactly what happened. And through that exploration and through the solving of that mystery, there are a bunch of reveals about these people and their connections and their values, etc., etc. So I loved the setup of this book. It was lacking a little something for me that I can't quite pinpoint. But I did really like it and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And the final book that I read in March, I just finished it a couple of days ago, ending on a real sour note. And that book is Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. Oh my indeed. Okay, what do I want to say? If you haven't watched my other wrap-ups, I read Fourth Wing in December, I think, November, December, something like that. And I ended up giving it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was okay. It was entertaining, and it ended with a cliffhanger that made me want to pick up the second book, Iron Flame. I fell asleep like a dozen times while reading Iron Flame. It was so hard for me to pay attention to this story, which is crazy because there are so many wild things that happen in this book. It is just climax after climax after climax, and still I did not care at all. I was snooze city, but I had made a promise to my best friend that I would read it, and so I really wanted to hold out and read it, but I did not have a good time. I felt like Violet, the main character, was so melodramatic throughout this whole book, and she was really annoying me with the decisions that she made. I couldn't stand the writing this time. I couldn't really stand it in Fourth Wing either, but the plot was enough to interest me, so I kept going. This time, the plot didn't hold up, and so I was just like miserable. That's a little dramatic. I wasn't miserable, but I wasn't having a good time. The end of the book ends on another cliffhanger, as these books tend to do, and I am just mildly interested in finding out what's going to happen in the next book. But I think when the next book comes out, rather than reading it, I'm probably just going to look up spoilers online so that I can know what happens without having to suffer through the like 500-600 pages that Rebecca Yarros is very likely to put out. This was just not a good book. I do not recommend. Thank you. And that's it. That's the last 2 months of reading for me. Here's to hoping that I do a little bit more reading in April, May, June, so on. But you never know. I'm gonna try to respect what is going on up here and what's going on in here and do my very best. But we're just gonna keep riding the wave, see where the wind takes me. If you've read any of these books and you had different thoughts than I did, please feel free to share them. I would love to hear it. And in the meantime, have a great rest of your day, week, weekend, what have you. and I will see you in the next one. Hello, it's me. I just finished filming this entire video like 10 minutes ago, and I was gonna sit down and edit it, and then realized that I totally forgot to tell you about another book that I read in the last 2 months, which is crazy because this book took like 2 weeks of my time. So in fact, I did read 7 books, not 6, in the last 2 months. And the other book that I read is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larrson. Before I go into my review and my overall thoughts of the book and like what it's about and everything like that, I need to make a quick little comment about this book. On BookTube, you often hear people talk about trigger warnings and things to look out for, and this book has a lot of trigger warnings. I actually held off on reading this book for years and years and years because I had heard that there was a really explicit, hard to read about, hard to watch if you watch the movie scene, and I just felt like I wanted to avoid it. And I'm not sure why, it was just like the way people talked about it that made me kind of stay away from it. Because I've read a lot of books with sexual assault in them, and I've been able to tolerate them just fine. But I don't know, this book, it just kind of scared me for a while. And then, yeah, in the last couple of months, I purchased it and I decided that I would just go ahead and give it a try and that I could probably handle it. When I got to the scene that I'm pretty sure most people are referring to, although there are several scenes in this book, but the first scene, and in my mind, the most graphic scene in this book, when I got to it, I had a very, very negative response. I had a visceral reaction to it. I was gagging, and I had just like a really, really hard time reading the words on the page, and I desperately wanted them to end just so I could move on and get to the next scene. I don't know what caused me to have such a strong response because, like I said, I have read about scenes very similar in other books, but this one was just very graphic and detailed and violent, and just hard for me to read. And I know it's different person to person, but I just wanted to put it out there. I have actually marked the pages and like where it happens in case you pick up this book and you want to skip over it. It is at the end of chapter 13. It takes place on like the last 2 pages. And if you're reading my version of the book, it takes place on page 249 to 251. And I feel like you can skip over it if you want to and still kind of get the gist of what happens. After I read that scene, I actually went online to look and see if there were going to be any more scenes that were that detailed later on in the book, and if I could like find what pages those were so that I could skip. I couldn't find anything online, and I ended up being fine for the rest of the book, even though there is some really, really disturbing stuff that happens later on in the book. But at the very least, I thought that I would share the couple of pages that I responded really negatively to so that you would have the option of skipping over if you wanted to. Now on to my review of the book. This is a mystery. It was originally written in Swedish, and the Swedish title of this book is actually Men Who Hate Women, or something along those lines, whereas the English version is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. So they're like wildly different titles. The Swedish version of the title is definitely a more appropriate name for the book, I would say. This is a book about men who absolutely hate women and who do horrific things to women. But essentially you're following this journalist try to uncover this mystery about the disappearance of a daughter in this very, very wealthy family in Sweden. It's been 40 years since she has disappeared, and her uncle has recruited this this journalist to find out what has happened, because it has just consumed this uncle. He wants desperately to know what happened to his favorite niece and to have some sort of resolution to the mystery. And that's what you're finding out in the book. What happened to Harriet? Where did she go? Did she die? Did she disappear on her own? There was never a body that was found. The first quarter of this book, maybe the first third of this book, was really, really slow for me. I had a hard time picking it up, and I wasn't very interested in the story because you're sort of just getting a lay of the land and you're trying to figure out why you even care to find out where Harriet went, because you don't know anything about her family. She was part of a very large family. So again, in the first third of the book, you're getting to know each individual family member and their role in the family and their connection to the family business and their connection to Harriet, the girl who disappeared. So you're spending a lot of time getting the foundation of the story before you really dive into the mystery. And so it took me a while to get into the story, but once I was in the story, I was locked in, you know what I mean? It was really, really good, really entertaining, very well thought out, and incredibly disturbing. If you have read Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter, it is that level of disturbing. So again, look up content warnings, see if this is the book for you. If not, there are other mysteries that you can read that I'm sure are just as good, so fret not. But if you are interested in reading this and you feel like you can stomach the scenes that I was talking about, then I would definitely recommend. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, and now the video is officially over. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye.